Well, a locally produced documentary aims to preserve Black history by returning tourism to oft neglected neighborhoods. Joining me to discuss are three local filmmakers: Dana Mall, executive producer of Moncrief Springs. Good morning, Dana.
Good morning.
Trey Ford, co founder of Black Films Matter. Good morning, Trey.
Good morning.
And Kyle Dorrell, cinematographer and owner of Jax Film Lab. Good morning, Kyle.
Good morning.
So let's start, Diana, talking about the intersection between Black history and preservation of some of these communities. What is the connection as far as you see it?
Yeah, so thank you for having me on. And it's really important that we understand how, when you talk about the preservation of these Black neighborhoods and Black history, that people know they work hand in hand. When you have sites in these neighborhoods that have historical significance, cultural significance, and they're not protected, legally protected, so that they can be maintained, that they can be developed, it makes a big difference in how they impact the landscape of these communities.
And so tell us just a little bit about the background of Moncrief Springs. It is named for a springs that actually, occurred naturally in that area. And it drew that as a development area unto itself because of its very existence.
Absolutely. So Ennis Davis did an article with the Jackson about Moncrief Park, and where the spring existed would have been at Moncrief Road and Gulf Fair. There's a little train track right there. And in the 60s, when I-95 was built, it choked out the water where the spring was, and the water levels decreased. And in the 1920s, it was a vacation destination. It was considered the Belmont of the South because there was a horse racing track there, and nightclubs, and of course the spring. And it's really sad to know that different development plans, urban planning, highways encroached on that site, and now we don't get to enjoy the beauty anymore. But there are some other things in the neighborhood that are really important, like some of the museums. Durkeeville Historical Museum and the J.P. Small Stadium is there.
Yeah. Kyle, it could be seen as almost a metaphor in some ways for, what happened to parts of the original Moncrief Springs area, neighborhoods that have been, choked out in a lot of ways, whether it's due to redlining or, industrial zonings that were not appropriate, dumps that were created. But it does, this effort to put this film out there and to kind of put Moncrief Springs on the map, as it were, is an effort to, kind of reverse that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea of capturing these things and telling these stories, a lot of times we hear if there's no photo, if there's no video, it never happened. The more that we see this state have books banned and education railroaded and things of that nature, these stories are not getting out the way that they used to. It's our responsibility to ensure that our city is preserved the way we want it to be represented. And the stories that deserve to be represented, the blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into these places, is represented and talked about on a regular basis.
Yeah, and if I could add, Ann, the point of making this film is so that people can know about the hidden history in Jacksonville. And I think for too long as a city, a lot of these Black neighborhoods have not had the appropriate amplification so that they can sustain themselves. And that's for the businesses, that's for the schools, that's for the parks. And we talked about this before about, marketing practices in the city of Jacksonville that have been harmful to Black neighborhoods. And so we're hoping the film is a way for us to correct that.
I want to get to Trey in just a second, but to your point, Dana, you brought with you this map of the attractions in Jacksonville, in and around Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, it's full of things, including the little dinosaur that everybody loves on Beach
Does everybody
Boulevard.
love that dinosaur?
Well, I don't know if everybody does, but a lot of people do. But there is a whole section northwest of the city that is empty.
Yeah.
And we're looking at that. If you're watching our live stream right now, you can see the northwest quadrant of the map. There is, there's no attractions.
Yeah, not even a single tree icon. And I'll preface this by saying, Visit Jacksonville is one of the sponsors of the film, and I brought this to their attention, and I said, we got to do better. We got to fix this map. And I believe that through the efforts of my film, they are going to correct this map. But, the Visitors Bureau and some other departments in the city are responsible for bringing people to Jacksonville, and that map is telling you where they're bringing them and where they're not bringing them. And a lot of that is Councilman Peluso's area, District 7. There's no label of Durkeeville. There's no label of Moncrief. None of the black historical neighborhoods are identified on that map.
I think a lot of the stories that get told are to dehumanize those areas and to literally not represent anything there is just the same.
Yeah. Trey Ford, you're the co-founder of Black Films Matter. How does telling the story of a neighborhood like Moncrief impact in any way the life of it there, or its appreciation in the general public?
I feel like the primary way that people consume this type of information nowadays is through video. So, film is, I would say, the peak of that. Obviously we have social media and things like that, but Kyle mentioned book bans and things like that. I feel like through video we can tell a story that is multidimensional. Film is an amalgam of all the different forms of art, and that's getting people to, if you don't know the history, then it's more likely to repeat. So I feel as though we're sharing past history while also projecting a future history or the future. And I think that's really important because that allows us to tell the future story and to have some control.
Yeah.
And there are some really extraordinary stories in that area. There's the neighborhood was sort of always defined by something called the Point, which is the intersection of Myrtle Avenue and Moncrief. And that's home to Holly's Barbecue, among other things.
Yeah, that's an 80-year-old business that, if you live in the neighborhood, we love and adore Wendy, but a lot of people don't even understand the historical significance of Holly Barbecue. Her dad engineered the curly fry machine, and Jim Crow laws and things that held black folks back during his time prevented him from getting the machine patented. I also think about Brentwood Golf Course, and it's historically relevant because that was the first recreational site that got integrated because of the Brentwood Four. They had a lawsuit against the city so that they could be allowed to play when they wanted to. They were banned on their day, and I think Frank Hampton was a part of that. He was former councilman. And they fought. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the city had to integrate Brentwood Golf Course. And I think that, when you learn that history and you understand what race relations has been like in Jacksonville over the years from Jim Crow to now, you could see how and why our city is in the state that it is.
Yeah, I mean, one of the stories, of course, of the Moncrief area is Brown's Dump, which was a toxic ash site where they actually the city purchased or the school board purchased and located an elementary school that was there for a number of years.
And those toxic dump sites are all over the north side. And another one of my sponsors, St. John's Riverkeeper, they are behind the Rebuilt Resiliency Project. And we went and did a boat tour with them. And Kyle was able to get the drone out and film us doing the boat tour with St. John's Riverkeeper. And it launches from Burt Maxwell Boat Ramp and goes up to the Rebuilt River. But there's research being done to understand more about the toxicity levels in that part of the water and some of the other tributaries of the St. John to see how safe is it for people living in Rebuilt Scenic Area, and what does that mean for people who fish and do all those kind of recreational things along the riverbanks.
What do you see, Trey, as being, the future of this film, or kind of what its footprint might be in terms of moving the conversation about this area or creating a better sense of its history?
I see it as being an immersive, permanent billboard. When the film gets distribution and has a world premiere, people get to immerse themselves, whether they're from that area or not, into what it is now and what it can be. And so I also see it as something that other cities can identify as something that there's complementary, or there's the same thing is going on in multiple places. I think of Moncrief Springs as like another Black Wall Street. Of Tulsa, we have Chicago, we have Durham, we have these stories all over the United States. And Jacksonville, this is Jacksonville's opportunity to come to the top and to the forefront as an area that's doing something about it.
Yeah, and you mentioned Dennis Davis, who's local historian and writes for the Jackson, and I thought it was interesting in one of his pieces, he talks about how this is a great place for sort of the infill development that the city needs to address the housing crisis that it has.
Yeah, so I'm on the Durkeeville steering committee that Ennis is forming to do research on Durkeeville, and what we are discussing as a steering committee is, what do we want to see? What do we want our neighborhood to look like 20, 30 years from now? And one of them is affordable housing, but like Trey said, Myrtle Avenue used to be Black Main Street, and to reinvest in that area will really turn around a lot of the issues that we see when it comes to crime, poverty, food desert. 8th Street was Millionaire Row because people like Blodgett, A.L. Lewis, they lived there and they were the first black millionaires in the city. And I think that when the people who live there have a sense of pride in their culture and a pride in their history, the neighborhood will elevate.
We're going to have to leave it there, but just if people want more information about the film briefly, Dana.
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook. We're looking for sponsorships. So if you want to get involved, you can write a check. You can definitely ask us on different ways to get involved.
All right, Dana Mall, Trey Ford, Kyle Dorrell, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.